there's a whisper that lives inside you. It wears your voice, knows your thoughts, and mimics your instincts so well that you've mistaken it for your own. But it isn't. It never was. It speaks in quiet commands, not loud enough to alarm you, just strong enough to steer you. You hear it when you look in the mirror and feel a subtle wrongness, a misalignment you can't explain. You hear it when success feels hollow, or when you hold back love like it might disappear if you're too generous. You hear it when you hesitate, not knowing where the fear comes from, only that it lives somewhere inside your ribs. That voice didn't begin with you. It started long ago, before you had words, before you even knew you were separate from the world. And it didn't speak then. It was just presence, a shape, a way of being. The weight in the room, the silence after a slammed door, the way someone looked at you, or didn't. It was him, not the man you see now, not the father he became or pretended to be. It was the ghost of who he was in your earliest world, the impression he left like a fingerprint on glass, subtle, clear, and inescapable. His tone, his gaze, his praise, or his absence, all etched into you before your mind could defend itself. And so that voice you hear, it's not yours. It's the echo of how he loved or failed to love, the aftermath of how he showed up or how he disappeared. It's his silence, sculpted into your conscience. And no matter what kind of father he was, a hero, a tyrant, a stranger, or some strange cocktail of all three, the true weight isn't in what he did. It's in what you did with his image. It's in what you assumed you had to become to earn his affection, his attention, his approval. That's the tragedy, not the man, the mythology, the invisible blueprint you built of what it meant to be worthy. And here's the part that unsettles the most. You don't even remember doing it. You don't remember the moment your child mind fused identity with approval. You don't remember the exact night you decided that your tears made you weak or that perfection was safer than expression. But it happened. Quietly. Deeply. And now, every time you push yourself beyond reason, every time you judge yourself mercilessly, you're obeying a command from someone who may not even realize the power they once held. This isn't about blame. And it's not about painting the father figure as saint or villain. It's about staring into the hidden corridors of your psyche, the places where your worth has been weighed against a scale you never built and never understood. Because whether he was physically present or emotionally distant, whether he yelled or remained terrifyingly quiet, whether he tried his best or didn't try at all, his shadow remained. And you've been living in it ever since. That shadow isn't measured in memories. It's measured in behaviors. It's in the way you flinch at rejection, the way you overextend to be chosen, the way your accomplishments taste like ashes as soon as they arrive. You don't know how many of your habits are rooted in trying to win the smile of a man who may have never smiled, or whose approval was so rare, it became your compass. And here's the cruel irony. The father that governs your self-worth now, he isn't even real. He's not the man himself. He's the myth, the internal idol you built out of longing and survival. A father forged not from his reality, but from the wound he left. A figure constructed out of silence and dreams and fear. And that inner archetype, that invisible judge, is the one you still serve. Some people spend their whole lives trying to impress a father who never clapped. Others do the opposite, rebel against the man only to become his reflection. Either way, the father remains in control. And until you look directly at the emotional architecture built in his name, you can't break free. Because freedom doesn't come from forgiving him. It starts with remembering yourself, the self you buried beneath performance and perfection and apology. The self you forgot while you were learning how to be loved by someone who didn't know how to love themselves. This is where the descent begins. into the core, into the tangle of emotion and memory and unmet need. Because to truly grow, you have to stop seeing your father as a man and start seeing him as a symbol. When you were young, he was the sky, the gravity, the law, and now, even if he's long gone, his shape still defines the edges of your choices. How you give, how you demand, how you run, how you cling, and maybe you've never asked why you sabotage yourself at the brink of something beautiful, or why you're drawn to people who don't stay, or why setting a boundary feels like sin. That pattern? It's not random. It's a ritual of the past, repeating through your nervous system, like a ghost reenacting its death. The child inside you is still waiting, still performing, still hoping, still blaming themselves for the silence in the room, the slammed door, the unspoken words. And that child is steering your adult life from the basement, making decisions, choosing lovers, setting goals, carrying a burden they were never meant to bear. You think you're being logical. You think you're ambitious. You think you're strong. But beneath it all is a frightened little version of you, trying to become someone who finally earns love. And the prison? It's real. It has a name, the father complex. It doesn't live in textbooks. It lives in your skin, in your schedule, in your relationships, and it will own you until you stop looking for the man to change and start changing the story you built around him. You are not bound to repeat what he did. You are not fated to inherit his silence, his anger, his withdrawal, but you will, unless you face the illusion that love must be earned through obedience, sacrifice, or pain. And this is where it hurts the most. Because the moment you start to step out of his mold, something inside you panics. Not because it's wrong, but because it feels like betrayal, like walking away from loyalty, like killing a god. But that's not betrayal. That's evolution. And evolution hurts, because it requires dismantling the image that once kept you safe. It requires killing the internal father, not the man, but the voice. The one that still tells you you're not enough. The one that punishes every flaw. The one that only claps when you bleed for your worth. And just when you think you've escaped, he returns. Not in your thoughts, but in your standards. In the way you crucify yourself for failure. In the way you chase unreachable goals, thinking they will finally make the voice say, "I'm proud." That voice was born from 100 unsaid things. From every time you needed to hear, "You're good just as you are," and didn't. From every look of disappointment that made you smaller. And now, that voice lives inside you, disguised as ambition, as responsibility, as drive. But it's not. It's fear. Fear wrapped in perfection. And the cruelest twist of all? The father you're trying to please may not even recognize the script you're acting out, because you wrote it as a child, to survive, to cope, to matter. And you act it out still, in boardrooms, in bedrooms, in silence. So here's the truth. If you keep chasing his approval, whether he's alive or gone, you'll never be free. Because the applause won't heal what you never caused. That wound? It closes when you go back, not to him, but to yourself, to the child, to the moment you decided you weren't enough unless you performed, and from that place, you begin again. Not by forgetting, not by hating, but by becoming. Becoming what no one ever was for you. A stable presence, a witness, a protector, a guide. That's what healing is. Not becoming someone new, but remembering who you were before you were trained to forget. And there's no shortcut. No one else can hold your hand through it. Because this is the moment you stop being the child and become the guardian. But even as you begin to reclaim yourself, don't expect the pain to vanish. It won't. It softens. It quiets. It turns from a wound into a root. One that grounds you in truth instead of illusion. One that says, "I do not need to earn love. I already am it." There's a part of you that knows this already. It's why you feel tired in rooms where you should feel alive. Why you question your joy before you even taste it. Why love feels like a performance and rest feels like guilt. It's because you've been carrying someone else's silence inside your chest like it's a secret you're not allowed to name. You didn't just inherit his habits. You inherited his emotional gravity. The way he swallowed his sadness, the way he avoided tenderness, the way he treated vulnerability like weakness. And now you do the same, without meaning to. You've learned to flinch before you feel. You've learned to tighten up before you speak your truth. Because somewhere inside you is a belief. If I show too much, I'll be left behind. If I'm too soft, I'll be broken. But those beliefs didn't begin in your thoughts. They live in your body, in your posture, in the weight you carry between your shoulders, in the way you brace yourself when someone raises their voice, not because of what's happening, but because of what it reminds you of. The memory isn't always clear, but your nervous system remembers everything. The shadow of your father didn't vanish when he left the room. It stayed, pressed into your instincts like a watermark. He may have never touched you with cruelty, but his silence, his distance, his expectations, they shaped your world. You learned how to shrink without being told. You learned that love meant performance. That worth was a moving target. And even now, as you try to build a new life, those patterns follow you. Not because you're weak, but because you were trained too well. And here's the unspoken truth. You are not just your father's child. You are the heir of everything he never resolved. You carry the emotional debris of his war with himself, his father's voice, his buried shame, his hunger to be seen, to be respected, to feel safe in a world that taught him to hide. And you wonder why it's so hard to break the cycle? It's because you were never just dealing with your story. You were carrying generations. And somewhere along the way, you mistook loyalty for love, as if becoming him would redeem him, as if repeating the pain would finally make sense of it. But it doesn't. It never does. Because his wounds, left unhealed, became your blueprint. And now, the real battle isn't with him. It's with the echo of him that lives in your choices. In the way you flinch at connection. In the way you can't stand being wrong. In the way you ache for praise and despise yourself for needing it. That's the cycle. And breaking it isn't rebellion. It's resurrection. You're not betraying your father by becoming yourself. You're saving yourself from becoming a ghost. But this part of the path is messy, because as soon as you begin to change, the guilt arrives. That quiet, choking guilt that says, you're walking too far. You're forgetting where you came from. You're not being loyal. But let me ask you, who are you betraying by becoming whole? And who are you saving by staying broken? This is the paradox of healing. You have to leave behind the emotional compass you were raised with, even if it's the only one you've ever known. Even if it means walking into uncertainty with nothing but your own trembling voice. Because the truth is, you don't know yet who you are without that shadow guiding you. And that's terrifying. For so long, he defined your edges. He was the measure of strength, success, respect. Even if you hated it, at least you understood it. Now you're in a space with no signs, no footsteps to follow. And this silence, this terrifying silence, is where the real work begins. This is where you learn to trust the voice that doesn't yell, the one that doesn't shame, the one that doesn't require achievement to grant you rest. That voice is yours. But it sounds so unfamiliar at first because you've been tuned to a different frequency. You were taught that pressure meant purpose, that punishment meant love, that if you weren't constantly fixing yourself, you were failing. But that's a lie wrapped in generational pain. And here's where it gets even more complex. Because your ideas about masculinity or femininity, how to love, how to lead, how to express, all of it came through the lens of your father. Whether he was present or absent, gentle or harsh, his energy wrote a script for you, one you've been following without realizing it. Until now. Now you're holding the script in your hands. Now you're questioning it. And that's power. Not the power of dominance, the power of choice. But choosing yourself doesn't come naturally when you were raised to adapt. You've learned how to read the room before you read your own feelings. You've learned how to take responsibility for other people's discomfort before you honor your own needs. Because somewhere, you decided that your safety depended on being acceptable. And even now, you're terrified that if you stop performing, the world will stop loving you. But here's the truth. No one ever said to you out loud, love that demands your self-abandonment isn't love, it's control. And you've been calling it home, so this is where the healing turns from theory into practice. It's not about reflections anymore. It's about the choices you make when no one is watching. It's about the moment you feel rage rising in your chest, and instead of burying it like your father did, you breathe through it. You ask what it's trying to protect. You listen. It's about the moment you want to run from closeness, but instead, you stay. Not because it's comfortable, but because you're learning that you're safe now, that you're allowed to be seen,